Synchronicity Time with Susan Bennett Fisher and Martin Fisher, the co-founders of Body of Nine. So what if we knew why and how we chose the people we chose?
Yes, we choose all sorts of people in our life, and people come into our lives, they have an effect, they stay with us, sometimes they leave, but we start in our lives with our parents, if we're lucky, and most of us are. And so what we're going to talk about today...
It's hard to start without your parents.
Well, do we know them? There are people that are not lucky enough to be born in connection with their parents. And so what we're going to talk about today is, how do you choose? And how do the people around you influence you, consciously and unconsciously, for your life?
Yes, because sometimes we make really good choices, and sometimes those choices aren't so good in our love relationship, in our friend relationships, and we don't necessarily understand, there's the relationships that we repeat over and over again. Why are we doing that? There's all sorts of thought about it, but we've actually studied that as part of our work. And what it turns out is that we are most comfortable with people who have natural numbers that we're most familiar with.
It's a very, very high percentage, 80-90% of the people that you hang out with and you're comfortable with are as a result of being comfortable from a relatively young age with that natural number. As we've mentioned many times, in families the numbers don't repeat. So you're actually going to be very, very comfortable potentially with people that have made you very comfortable in their lives, which...
Or uncomfortable with those.
Uncomfortable, exactly.
So we give love from the movement area of our body that's activated by our natural number. So you're used to receiving love in a very particular physical way and a very particular kind of energy that comes from an expression of love from each of the natural numbers. And on top of that, you're used to that physicality, that energy signature, and when it doesn't work, you're also used to how that feels.
So your nature, when you're born, your natural number comes in whole and is affected by everything that happens in your life, and that nurture sits on top of that nature. And as we are 50% animals, 50% more than that perhaps, but we respond with our bodies, and our bodies are used to very much responding at a very different level than perhaps we're conscious of, and feeling at a different level than we're conscious of, and interacting at a level different than we're conscious of. And so, a prime example, if you are lucky enough to have wonderful parents, then those natural numbers and those energies and that feeling of being loved will resonate with you for your entire life.
Right, and you run into people of that natural number, they will be attractive to you. You will like to be with them. You will want to be with them because you're used to that form of the expression of love.
So when we use the term attraction here, we're talking about our bodily attraction. We're not talking about, okay, we've been taught by whatever media that this is a particularly beautiful picture. So the interaction with someone's beauty and attractiveness are not necessarily connected. We've all had the experience, I think, of finding someone really, really attractive that just doesn't resonate with us. We think, oh, that's an attractive person. We go up to them and there's just no connection. And vice versa, it's like you meet someone who's like, well, yeah, they're okay. I mean, they seem to like have a nice personality perhaps. And you go up to them and say, wow, I've got this really great connection with them, because you can communicate with them in a way that is very, very deeply rewarding for you.
It's familiar too.
Yes.
Very familiar. Especially in your youth, in the teen years, when you first start to have crushes, you often, like the really big crushes are on the natural numbers that you know really well. So the time where your stomach drops and your heart rate races, and those are attraction that combines that familiarity with that physical attraction.
Now, you've probably heard the phrase that we marry our parents, and we believe this is a very strong reason behind that. The other part of this, though, is also true in that when you marry your parent, there's often parent-child wounds that perhaps need to get healed. And one of the things that we help people understand is that just because you're attracted to someone that's like your parents doesn't mean this is the person you should be resolving that trauma with.
Right, and we can have multi-generational trauma and not even know that it exists in our family. So if your parents' parents, had stuff going on that you don't know about, which rarely do we actually know about the problems in the families a generation or more away.
Yes. There's a case to be made, so
yeah.
Let's keep going.
and that intergenerational trauma is part of the energetic patterns that you're also familiar with. And so learning about what is the nature and how does that nature nurture you in an effective way is one of the ways that you break those intergenerational traumas.
And if one believes in karma and whatever the word perhaps they use for it, there is some evidence that at least psychically, spiritually, if you use those phrases, the karma from good and bad behaviors in the past does come down through family, through family, through family. And being aware of that allows you to heal the trauma around your family. And I don't mean the capital T trauma. That's not a job for us.
Well, Body of Nine isn't about how do you heal that trauma. That's therapy and trauma work, and it's different. But there's this piece of truly understanding your nature. Like, what part of me is my nature? Because your nature's whole. And what you're attracted to in other people is that same wholeness of their nature. So if you know your parents' natural number, let's say it's 7, if you have a 7 parent, you're used to being parented in a particular style, and you're used to receiving this really ethereal, vulnerable, beautiful form of love that comes uniquely from 7s.
At least you're aware that it's there. And again, in a body-to-body, not conscious-to-conscious connection, that beautiful, ethereal, supporting, loving connection is always there from natural number 7. If your natural number is one that doesn't necessarily connect instantly, mentally at least, with that natural number, there can be some trauma in there, and I'd use the word trauma badly in that
Well,
case.
now I would reframe that. So there's perpetual conflict.
That's the better word.
In any two combinations, and there's perpetual goodness in any two combinations, right? And so if your natural number doesn't understand the nurture and the nature that's coming at you, you can misinterpret it.
Certainly, because your parents, it's very, very unlikely they understood your natural number. And in fact, it's unlikely they understood their own natural number.
Right. So they weren't parented well, and then they don't know what to do with you other than the models that they got, which may or may not have worked for you.
So I'm going to make an assumption that your parents did the best they could for you. And you may or may not agree with that statement. And part of knowing why you're connected to people of a certain natural number is because you're familiar with that, and because there is an element of understanding and knowing that true love.
Yes.
Whether you can recreate that with the person you're with, that's a different question, and a lot of that depends on all the nurture and all the conflict that's coming between.
Right, and you circle back to that nature piece. It's like, okay, what you're trying to fix is the nurture that didn't work. So if you pick a person that has both the nature and also the same broken nurture things as your parents, you're doing two things. You're being attracted to their nature, but you're trying to fix those nurture problems. So it's really, really much, in some ways, easier to try to fix those nurture problems outside of your primary relationships. But to go with the attraction.
Yes.
Because the attraction, as long as you're not duplicating the broken nurture aspect.
And one of the beautiful things about Body of Nine is that you and your primary partner can have this discussion. You can basically know that your parents had a certain natural number, you would have liked to have been raised a certain way, there were certain things that cause conflict, and that you're seeing a repeat of that conflict with your partner, and you can, as adults, as people working through your stuff, you can have that conversation and heal that with your partner, providing it's done consciously and with support.
Yes, we truly encourage you to seek coaches, therapists, whatever is appropriate for the healing that you need for those really deep inner voices, inner experiences, things we embody without having realized we've taken them into ourselves.
But let us reassure you that your trials and tribulations, your conflicts are not unique. There are very classical patterns. Mm-hmm. And the wonderful thing about this work again is that this helps raise those patterns and the classical patterns. And you may not have all those patterns. You may not have any. But the majority of couples that we work with find that there are some classical things that come down from their past, from their...
Based off the natural numbers. Interaction that comes from the typical areas where those two natural numbers don't do things the same way. And don't see things the same way, and don't have the same, and then you layer beliefs on there, and you've got it even more complex.
It gets very complex,
right.
Which is why we recommend you go and see a professional.
So that's love relationship is
Yes.
really what we've been talking about.
And
It's
then
like
I
how
just-
do you choose a partner?
Now I wanted to sort of bring up the whole familial relationship, brothers and sisters, because that also impacts how you interact with other people.
It does.
Because they're not like you either.
Right.
But there is no, well, there is actually some sort of dynamic of power in terms of where you were, you the oldest, you the middle, the youngest,
Your
etc.
birth order makes a difference.
Birth order makes a huge difference.
And and what happens to you in those different birth order positions? Yeah, there are classic birth order issues.
Yes.
Also, whether there were boys and girls
Yes.
in the family.
Family relationships are tough.
They are, and we don't understand each other because natural number doesn't repeat. But you may have had a favorite sister or brother,
Yeah.
right? And so that favorite sister or brother gave you a model of what it's like to be friends. And so you will often seek out friends that, again, the same way, are familiar nature-wise, because you know how to interact with people of that natural number. In the past, way in the past, before birth control and our shrinking family sizes, family sizes used to be 8 or 9 or 10 or 12 people. And in those times, you would have been familiar with more because it doesn't repeat until you get to the 9th or the 10th person in the family, based off of our research. That suggests you would have been familiar with all 9 numbers.
But that was unfortunately, a long, long time ago now.
Yeah, well, at least a generation or two.
At least in the world that we've been.
Yeah, and I think what you see as a result is you see a narrowing of our ability to be together as a result of that. Because you don't, there could be a whole natural number that you just don't have in your life, ever.
Yeah.
Because you never choose it, you don't know it, you're not familiar, and that kind of person doesn't make any sense.
Right.
So it's actually really a fun and important thing to cultivate relationships consciously with people of all 9 natural numbers.
And it turns out most of us, most of the time, don't hang out with people of the same natural number. With the exception of natural number 8, which we do find, they do feel groups, or they have a much affinity for people of that same natural number.
Well,
and
one's also to a certain extent.
to some extent, yes.
Yes. And ironically, those are the ones that are kind of paired.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, and there are reasons for that around trust and how they experience the world and how easy it is to build trust and lose trust and those things, and communication. But in general, most of the people you hang out with don't share your same natural number. And as Susan said, we do sometimes avoid certain natural numbers because of things that happened in the past. If there was a bully at your school that was a certain natural number, then maybe you'd avoid that natural number because of the negative bodily connotations of meeting someone like that. 20 years later, you may find someone of that natural number, you bump into them at work, and you can't get on with them because there's so many bodily memories of how you were treated by that natural number. Nothing to do with the person that you're working with.
But that natural number, that form of energy, that way of being, that it can trigger within you the ability not to be present with that person, not to see them with open eyes, not to view them as a new person.
As a new person. So part of our work as human beings is growth, I believe. And knowing that you've met somebody, you don't know why you don't get on, and now we're giving you a little bit of a place to go, look, is there something in your past that is related to how you're reacting to that person in the present? Because knowing that, you can start again with help, professional help, or even with yourself, go and meditate, whatever it takes for you to be able to find out what's causing that response in your body, because it's probably not mental, and work on healing that trauma with that particular natural number. Because as Susan said, there is a calmness, a completeness, when a large number of people together, 9 different natural numbers, hang out.
And unfortunately, we don't get that experience very often.
Very seldom.
At work, now this is very interesting, because work is actually more diverse. We have seen in the organizations that we have worked with, we've gone into companies and identified teams of people, all the employees in a company, and what we see is there is a relative diversity, but sometimes a hiring manager will skew in a particular direction. There was a hiring manager in an organization that we worked with that only hired natural number 8 nurses. It was a hospital that some colleagues of mine worked at, and they only hired natural number. She was a 5, a doctor supervising a nurse, and she hired 8s. So that can happen. Not a bad choice in that situation. 8s are able to handle trauma. They're able to respond and live under that kind of perpetual trauma. So you will see that at work, in the workplace, which means in work, sometimes it's going to be harder.
Yes.
Because you're working with people that you haven't necessarily chosen, And you don't necessarily understand. We've all had those kinds of relationships at work.
And so, a small disclaimer, every natural number can do any job.
Yes.
There are certain places in the world, certain job descriptions and those things that are filled by a preponderance of a certain natural number. That's not to say it has to be that natural number, but there are certain things that certain energies are drawn towards. And the list is actually relatively long, but anybody can do anything.
Right. And you do have a certain set of skills that is born into you naturally associated with your natural number, and gifts, and also a purpose. And so when you align those skills, gifts, and purpose at the level of your nature, and you find a profession or a job or a calling or whatever you're looking for that lines up with that, generally you're happier.
Yes.
Which is one of the reasons when we work with people and we identify their natural number, they often quit their jobs.
Yes. Sometimes within days, sometimes within months, sometimes within years, but
or they look for something within their organization where they're better suited. And that's one of the benefits of being a boss and finding out your natural numbers. It's like, we had one organization we worked with who had a 7 that was very isolated from the rest of the team. And this wasn't healthy for her or for the team because nobody was getting that 7 energy of change and growth and process improvement.
Yeah.
And she was out there trying to make this happen, but there was nobody to help her with the relationships because she was isolated. And 7 needs help with relationships to connect in and give their messages clearly. So understanding natural number in the workplace allows you to create dynamic teams that work together despite these natural challenges.
And so we've been lucky enough, and I think many people that we've worked with over the years have been lucky enough to be in a job that's actually aligned with their natural number. I think most people feel more fulfilled that way, just a guess. But we certainly do, being more fulfilled doing what we're doing and giving the wisdom that's baked into our bodies. Yes, I'm sure that any of us with 10,000 hours of anything become an expert in particularly anything. But I think it happens a lot faster, and there's a lot more innate skill in things that are related to our natural number.
What they're lined up with, yes, absolutely. It's easier. It turns out the things that come, the skills that come with your natural number are easier for you. And in your friends that you choose, sometimes we choose something that we really need. Like I often will choose, if I want to get something done, and innately would choose 8s. Or if I wanted to feel safe, I would choose 8s for me.
Yes.
Or 9s.
Yes.
And well, for me, I hadn't known a lot of 9s in my life, and for a while it took me a long time to figure out how to work with people who had natural number 9. It was an Achilles heel for me. And it's something I have actually consciously said, how do I do that? And how do I not get stuck in the perpetual problems that come between 6 and 9? So you can actually learn and consciously choose who you spend your time with.
And I would offer that if you wish to move up the chain of supervision, management, working with a bunch of people efficiently, understanding how to work with each of the natural numbers is going to make your life easier and enable you to be heard better. You can hear them better. There are no downsides at all.
And that's true in an organization, and that's true in your friend base as well. It's like stepping outside your box is one of the ways that you grow.
Curiosity is a huge magnifier when you're working with people.
Yes.
Being curious about people. Who are they? What do they care about? How do they work things? Share how you approach things and see how they approach things and understand the differences. I was having a conversation with someone just the other day, and we'd had a couple of arguments recently, and I explained how my processing works, and they had no idea. And they explained how their processing worked. And our relationship jumped up to a new level because we both understood each other and understood how to have the fun and deep, powerful conversations that we wanted to have without pissing each other off, basically.
Yes. Yes. That always, one of my favorite messages from this is don't think that the other person is coming from the perspective that you're coming from, because they're not. Even if they share a natural number, but I mean, they're more likely to if they share a natural number. But if they don't, you can be pretty sure you have no idea why they're doing what they're doing.
And similarly, and very importantly, the people in your life, if they share a natural number with someone that has less of a good past with you, especially a parent, don't ascribe to them what you would ascribe to your parents. Just because your primary partner says something that, if your parent said something, would mean something, there's a fair chance that they don't going down the same path because they're the same natural number, but their history is different, their nurturing
Yeah, and
is
just
different.
remembering that you might have misunderstood the meaning of those
From your parent
requests.
too.
And you know,
Yeah.
your whole life long.
Yes.
And my mother's living with us now, and it's really funny because every now and then I realize, oh, that's where I got that from.
Mhm.
And now that we're both grown up, 60 and 80, it is something that we can say, maybe we can change the dynamic of that conversation.
It's never too late to change
Never
that.
too late.
And if you're lucky enough that your parents are still around, actually getting them identified, and that the people that have done that, and we've had quite a fair number now, where adult level kids, 30, 40, 50, have had their parents identified and has taken their relationships to a whole new level.
Right, and also their own self-understanding.
Yes.
So our relationships are out there to both support us, to teach us, to help us grow, and different natural numbers help us in those different ways. Are they familiar? Are they not familiar? Are they part of our trauma healing? Are they part of our triggers? Or are they asking us to be more? You know, and so each natural number has a deep purpose in the grouping of the 9 when the 9 is together, and understanding that purpose and how it relates and what your interactive history is with that natural number is extremely important.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's why we hang out with the people we do. That's why we are the way we are, and those the opportunities that life has given us to grow.
Mm-hmm. And it's why sometimes somebody comes into your life for a short period of time, and then some last a lot longer, and some create great change and then disappear. And all of those interactions are beautiful opportunities to grow and learn.
And how they come into your life and whether they stay might actually depend on your natural number too. So
Yep.
there is no right answer. There is no wrong answer.
Nope.
Just be aware.
Be aware, be curious. Thanks for listening.
Talk to you later. Bye bye.